Hello everyone, welcome to this webinar on sales forecasting. I'm your host Gary Smith. I'll be leading the webinar. I'm delighted to say also on the call is my right hand man and colleague Ben Affleck-Curry. Are you there, Ben?
I am here. Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. I'll be managing all the questions and everything today, so if anyone does have any questions, feel free to use the GoToWebinar pane to ask any. And I can actually see a question's just come in, the first one. We are recording the webinar, yes, to the person who asked that. And we'll be sending an email out tomorrow with the webinar recording included.
Excellent, thanks Ben. So here are the topics that we're going to cover this afternoon or this morning for a lot of people on the call. We'll talk about why sales forecasts are so often unreliable, because if we can understand the causes of unreliability and inaccuracy, then we can start to do something about it. I'll also explain my recommended way of physically creating a forecast in Salesforce. And then we'll get on to the meat of talking about how do you improve the accuracy and the reliability of sales forecasts. And I'll look at some reports and some sales metrics that really help you do that. And finally, we have some free resources. We have some things that will really help you improve the forecasting and the reliability of that process in your business. So that's what we're going to cover. Let's get started. I think most people are on the call because they believe sales forecasts are important. I mean, after all, many sales forecasts get shared with the management team, with your peers, with finance, with back office staff. But very often those forecasts are taken with something of a pinch of salt. And in fact, in many businesses, not even the VP of sales believes the forecast, even though they probably wish they could sometimes. So we know that sales forecasts are important, but we also know that very often they're unreliable. In my experience, I think that I found there to be three causes of that unreliability. The first is that deals slip from one month to the next. Often they slip in the last week of a month or a quarter. In fact, sometimes they slip in the last day of the month. And that's a problem because most sales forecasts are submitted, they're not submitted on the last day of the month, they're submitted either on the first day of the month or part of the way through the month or even before the month starts. And it contains deals that at the last minute appear to slip from the forecast, slip from the month or slip from the quarter. That happens, I think, because in part it happens because salespeople tend to be optimists. They genuinely believe a deal will close this month, or they maybe wish it will close this month in order to help them meet their target. But it also happens in some companies because of pressure to maintain or even increase the size of the pipeline. And taking deals that no longer have legs, taking them out of the pipeline doesn't help that pressure. It contradicts that pressure. So deals that perhaps with the best will in the world aren't going to close anytime soon, get jogged along from one month to the next in order to alleviate that pressure on pipeline size. So that's one of the reasons why I think sales forecasts in many companies are inaccurate. These deals slip at the last minute. Another reason, and this is really the opposite end of the scale, is that sometimes deals appear out of nowhere. We've submitted our sales forecast. It doesn't contain this deal that suddenly arrives. And sometimes that saves our bacon. And other times it kind of is just embarrassing. And in fact, forecasting under revenue is almost as bad as forecasting over revenue because it makes the VP of sales look like they don't know what they're doing. They haven't got a grip of the situation. It's called sandbagging. And it happens for various reasons, not least the desire of salespeople sometimes to avoid management focus and management pressure on large deals, keep them under the radar, and they get entered in at the last minute. But again, it's another source of unreliability in sales forecasts. So those are two sort of inward pressures, if you like, on the unreliability of a sales forecast. The other issue is that it's customer-driven uncertainty. There is no crystal ball that tells us definitively when deals will close when the customer is going to sign the contract or commit to a deal. And we can try as hard as we can with close plans and other techniques to get the customers to agree to a deal when we think they will agree and to forecast it accurately and so on. But at the end of the day, we are left with a degree of customer uncertainty as well. But knowing about those three different sources of uncertainty, then knowing about those three different sources of unreliability means we can start to do something about that when we look at our sales forecast. And before we look at the accuracy of sales forecasts, how do you physically create a sales forecast in Salesforce? There's essentially three ways. Now, some companies, some people will be using the forecast tab. If you're using the forecast tab and it works for you, great. Carry on using it and carry on applying it across the business and using it for your sales forecast. It's not, generally speaking, something I recommend for companies that are not already using it. And the reason is it's a complicated piece of functionality that requires a lot of management attention and input from salespeople and so on. So it's a difficult thing to use, but if you are using it and it works for you, great, carry on. What you'll find is that when we come to talk about the accuracy and reliability of sales forecasts, which I'm going to do in a couple of minutes, those things apply equally to you as they do to people using other methods. Probably the second most popular way, I don't know about the second most popular, probably the most popular, but the second on this bullet point way of creating a sales forecast is actually to export the data to Excel. So that happens time and time again. People export the data to Excel, they manipulate it in Excel to something that they think is acceptable, and then that becomes the sales forecast. You know, you've paid for all these licenses, you might as well try and get your sales forecast into Salesforce, and then it's based on accurate bottom-up information, and it's a lot less work as well. And the third way of creating a sales forecast in Salesforce, and the way that I recommend, is to use an expected revenue report. So what is an expected revenue report? Well, quite simply, it's a report that shows for a given period, whether that period is a month or a quarter or perhaps even a year in some businesses, but let's take a month. It's a report that shows for this month the deals that we've already won, and we're including won deals because very often you're submitting a sales forecast halfway through a month, let's say, so you want to include deals you've already won. So deals that you've already won, and the weighted value of pipeline opportunities. And by weighted value, I'm talking about the amount multiplied by the probability. So that's an expected revenue report. Let me just show you an example of that. So here's an expected revenue report in Salesforce. It shows us how much revenue we should expect to get in each of the months. And I'm going to assume for the purposes of this webinar that we are in April at the moment, and I think at the moment there's another 5 or 6 working days of April. So let's look at the sales forecast for April. And we can see we've got some deals that are won here, and we've got the weighted value in other stages. Now, a lot of sales managers, a lot of sales leaders have a problem with weighted value. They argue that deals are binary. You know, we will either win a deal or we will lose it. I'll either get 100% of the value or I'll get 0 value. So why should I take the weighted value? Well, the reason is that your April sales forecast contains deals that, with your best judgment, will close in April. Now, the problem is that you don't know which of those deals will close and which will not close successfully. If you did know which will close, then you wouldn't even bother with the ones that aren't going to close successfully, or the ones that aren't you're not going to win. So you know that you're not going to win everything in the pipeline. So you can't take the 100% gross value of the pipeline because you know that's not going to happen. But the deals that you have some good confidence about will have a higher probability. The deals that you're less confident but still believe there is a chance of them closing in this month, those deals will have a lower probability. So you don't need many deals. You only need 10 deals or so closing in April to get a statistically valid forecast of the amount of revenue that you should get in a given month. And of course, don't forget that Salesforce, like most other CRM systems, has a default probability. You can obviously set this and you can change the stage values, but you can set the probability, the default probability associated with each stage. But don't forget, of course, salespeople themselves can override this. So if we're dealing with an existing strategic customer that regularly buys from us, we might want to say that actually the probability is higher this month. So the probability is a statistically valid way of getting a bottom-up view of your sales forecast, providing several things. One is that the probabilities are realistic. And the second thing is that providing everybody across the sales team understands what the different stage values mean. And I see a lot of companies where they have too many stages, or where there's ambiguity and a bit of confusion between the what is actually going on in each of those stages. So that if that's the case in your business, you want to get rid of that ambiguity, get a series of tightly defined stages that reflect your selling process and your customer's buying process and your best estimate of the probability associated with each one, and you can change that probability. Incidentally, and it's not for now, we also do have quite a sophisticated app that helps you extract historic probabilities and understand what happened in the past. So deals that were in an investigation, for example, what percentage of those went on to be successfully won. So talk to us about that if you're interested in that historical statistical analysis. So this is our expected revenue report. Let's go down to the underlying report. And what it tells us is that in April, we are forecasting that we will do $83,000. In fact, just short of $84,000. That's our sales forecast. And we can see the weighted values in each of those numbers there. And it's suggesting that we are going to do this month $83,000, nearly $84,000 worth of business. Do we believe that? Do we believe that? That figure and this report represents our sales forecast, our physical sales forecast. But before we get anywhere near submitting it or committing to it, do we believe it? Do we believe those numbers? And that's what I'm going to come and talk about now. How do we validate that figure? So that's the physical sales forecast, but how do we know it's reliable, given the things that sources of unreliability that we talked about earlier? Well, there are several reports and some sales metrics that you can use, and I'm going to explain at the end how you get these things, but there are several reports and metrics you can use to assess whether that forecast is reliable. And if it's not reliable, those reports will tell you what to do about it. And the first of those reports is this one here, and it's a simple report. It shows by close dates, so these are the different close dates. It shows deals due to close by stage in each month, and it shows the 100% value of the pipeline. So it's similar, it's very similar to the expected revenue report, but it's showing 100% of the pipeline. Now, these are the deals that are due to close in April, so that's what our sales forecast is based on. There are a number of things about this report and this data set that would immediately catch my eye. So let's assume that in this case our sales cycle is, let's assume it's 3 months, 90 days. So your sales process might be shorter, it might be longer, but let's assume it's 3 months. Now, if it is 3 months, there are, well, $38,000 worth of deals due to close in April. That would give you a weighted value. I know prospecting in this case is at 10%, so that would give you, that's $4,000 nearly of your expected revenue is associated with deals that are due to close in April but are still in the prospecting stage. Now, maybe some of those deals will close in April, maybe, but there's only 5 working days left in April, so that immediately makes me suspicious about the reliability of the sales forecast for April. In fact, some of these deals that are in investigation and proposal made, we might want to have a look at some of those as well. And the other thing that immediately catches my eye, February and March. Because if you look at February and March, there are deals still in prospecting, in investigation, in proposal made, and so on. Now, unless you've got a time turner, those deals aren't going to close in February and March. So what happened to those deals? Well, perhaps some of them really should have slipped over to April, in which case perhaps we've got more in the sales forecast for April than we anticipated. Perhaps some of those deals are already closed. Perhaps some of them are dormant deals. We actually lost them, but just nobody bothered to take them out of the pipeline. We can, of course, drill down on the report and start to have a look. This is quite a funky feature of lightning reports nowadays. So any of these, so here's the report, and I can click on any of these numbers and see immediately the deals, the opportunities that make up those numbers. So if I want to look at the deals in prospecting in March, for example, then I can click on the tab, click on the number, and it immediately shows me the deals that make up those numbers. And of course, I can then go and look at those deals, right click, open up in a new tab, that's what I do, and I could go and look at that deal and start to investigate it. So those deals that we talked about being in, for example, in prospecting or investigation, or even look in proposal made, we've got a big chunk of revenue associated in April with proposal made. How confident are we in some of those deals? So that's one way to immediately start to get some confidence or otherwise in your sales forecast for April. In fact, if I was doing the forecast for the quarter, I'd be looking at the same thing. I'd be saying, well, actually, some of these negotiation deals, are we confident we're going to bring those in? Some of these deals in May, how likely are those? But the other thing that immediately catches my eye about this report is this is December, and although we're not doing the sales forecast for December, we might at some point have to do, we're more than a quarter way through the year, we might have to do a sales forecast for the year. And you see this a great deal, particularly where the calendar month coincides with the financial year. And at the start of the year, a lot of sales organizations are under pressure to get the pipeline up. You see a big spike in the pipeline creation in January. Other deals bound to close sometime this year. I'll put it in December. It's bound to close. And in fact, very often when you look at those December deals, you find they're due to close on the 31st of December. And certainly in the UK, most people are in the pub on the 31st of December, and not many deals get done. So, so I'd be wary of that kind of spike in the pipeline there as well. So you can use that report to immediately start drilling down into your sales forecast and say, well, actually, should I move some of these deals along? Should some of them, perhaps some of those prospecting deals should be at a more advanced stage in the sales process. Perhaps some of them should be at later months and so on. So that's the first very useful report. Another report you can use to look at the quality of how confident you can be in the sales forecast for this month is to look at this report. Now, this report shows deals closing this month, deals closing in April, in other words, but when were they created? Now, if we believe that our sales process is typically 3 months, we absolutely know some deals will take longer. We know some deals will take less. But look here, I've got deals that are in negotiation going back to May last year. So again, in fact, beyond that. So again, now I'm starting to say I could drill down to that report and start to look at some of those individual deals and really start to say, well, how confident am I that some of those deals with a very long life cycle are really going to close this month. And when we come and talk about the sales metrics in a minute or two, you'll see some additional insight on deals that are due to close this month. So that's the second.
Gary, just before we move on, we've got
Sure.
a couple of questions that have come in. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah. The first question that we've got that has come in: do you recommend using the forecast categories to filter the sales forecast report?
It's an interesting question. And I guess it really applies, as much as anything applies to the expected revenue report, the sales forecast report, you could also apply it to other reports as well. The sales forecast categories is a standard feature of Salesforce. Actually, in fact, you can set these values to, these are all pipeline here, but you can set them to best case, pipeline, and commit. And in a lot of businesses, people will say, well, actually, my sales forecast is going to consist of those deals where the salesperson is committing. They're going to set them as commit. So absolutely, you physically could do that. And if you do that and it works, then great. I'm not a massive fan of it. The reason I'm not a fan of it is because the concept of a commit is an internally focused concept. It's not an externally customer focused concept. So to give you an analogy, Ben, it's a bit like for people who know about soccer, football. The person you expect to score the most number of goals on a soccer team is the centre forward. Well, most centre forwards are in that position because they've got a track record of scoring a lot of goals. They're good at it, they're committed, they're courageous and fast and everything else. But no centre forward in the English Premier League ever gets asked to commit to scoring a goal. You put them into a good position, they manufacture a lot of good positions from themselves, and you absolutely know the guy is doing his best. But you can't ask a centre forward on a football team to commit to scoring a goal. You know the guy's going to try, and he's going to try and apply some skill and so on. So I think the concept of prioritization is better. So in many cases, there's only a certain number of hours in the day. In many cases, there are always a certain number of hours in the day. So where am I going to prioritize? Which deals am I going to prioritize? And what am I going to do with that time? How am I going to work that deal? And that's a better concept, I think, than the concept of commit. But yes, you physically could use those forecast categories in one of these reports.
Okay, great. And we've got one more question that's come in. Someone said they can't see the expected revenue field on the opportunities within their Salesforce environment.
For reasons known to no one. So the field that this report is based on is called the expected revenue. You might need to adjust the field security to make it visible. By default, it's not always visible in every Salesforce environment. So just to adjust the field level security, if you're not sure how to do that, just get in touch with me afterwards and I can explain to you in more detail. Adjust the field level security in your Salesforce environment, and then that field will be visible. It's a standard field. It's not a custom field. It's a standard field. That's not always visible.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, nice one. Thanks. Yeah, don't forget, guys, continue to ask the questions. We are here to help. So
thanks, Ben. The place I was going to go next, you might think is a little bit strange when we're talking about sales forecast, because this report on the screen now looks at historic conversion rate. Now, how does that help us understand the reliability of a sales deal, a sales forecast? Well, if you think about your business, intuitively, what would you expect the conversion rate? And by conversion rate, I mean the win rate. The number of deals won in a month compared to the number of deals lost in a month. And by lost, I'm taking the generic concept of loss. Some you'll have lost to competitors. Others, in many businesses, the biggest competitors do nothing. The customer just never makes a decision. So what's the ratio between deals won and deals lost in any given month? Now, if you think about it intuitively in your business, it might be 30% in a typical B2B business, something like that. But take a look at this report here. It's showing that the conversion rate so far this year, well, hovers between 55 and 67. It's in the high 50s, 60s%. Now, what this is comparing the conversion rate by value. That's the darker column. So in other words, the won to loss ratio by value. And you can see in January we won 63% of opportunities by value, and we won 55% of opportunities by the number of opportunities. So it implies we won a slightly higher proportion of the higher value opportunities. Now, if intuitively you think, that the conversion rate in my business should be around 30%. How do we explain a conversion rate in 50 and 60%? And I would say you see this time and time again, the conversion rate in well above 50% or 70% in one I looked at earlier today. And there's several explanations, and it goes back to those areas of uncertainty that we were talking about before, which is there's several things that could explain this. Well, one is that deals that no longer have legs are not being removed from the pipeline. So the only deals that get set to closed in each month are the deals that are being won. Deals that are being lost, deals that should really be removed from the pipeline aren't being removed from the pipeline because either because it impacts the conversion rate or all those things that we talked about earlier. But really what this is telling me is that potentially my sales forecast is unreliable because the conversion rate isn't realistic. If my conversion rate is realistic, then my sales forecast has a better chance of being reliable. So this suggests to me that deals that probably should be removed from the pipeline aren't being removed from the pipeline. So again, it's another way of saying, okay, what are the actions that I should start to take what are the actions I should start to take in order to improve the reliability of my sales forecast? Right, I need to go and start to update some of those individual opportunities. The other thing, of course, that could be happening here is that deals that early stage deals that should be being brought into the pipeline aren't being entered into the system. In other words, salespeople are only bringing deals into the system when they're pretty confident a deal is there to be done. So realistically, in the real world, your conversion rate might be 30%, but actually in the system, it's 50, 60, 70% because a lot of the deals aren't getting into the system. So that would be another source of unreliability because those deals have been worked on. You just don't have any visibility of them. So again, it's telling me that my sales forecast is potentially unreliable. So how do you know which one of these two things it is really? Well, is it deals just being moved along all of the time, deals not being taken out of the pipeline, or is it kind of late stage deals entering the pipeline? Well, in actual fact, the chart above starts to give some information. So I would imagine in this case, deals are being consistently moved along because a lot of the deals due to close this month are very old. They're quite aged. So that suggests to me a lot of deals are just being shunted along in the pipeline, and that would be a key source of sales forecast unreliability. If you look at the pipeline closing this month, or if you look at the overall age of the pipeline, so if you expand this out to look at the whole pipeline when it was created, and you see actually a lot of the pipeline is not really that old, then it suggests that deals aren't being brought into the pipeline early enough. There's another chart just above that to the left that also gives us a bit of information as well. So if this was the case of deals not being brought into the pipeline until they're already fairly advanced, then I would expect this early stage to be lower. You see there's a reasonably healthy sort of this particular one looks at the total pipeline, and I would expect if excuse me, if deals aren't coming into the pipeline until they're fairly well advanced, then proportionately I would expect that to be lower, and these other portions to be higher as well. So that again, there are ways of saying, top down, should I believe that sales forecast? And based on the information that we've looked at here, that figure of $84,000, I think it was, I'm skeptical about that, and I'd want to go into some of those opportunities and really start to dig into them in the way that I showed you go down to the report, expand it to look at the actual deals due to close in April, open a lot of them up in other tabs and so on, and start to update them.
We've got a question here, Gary, regarding conversion rates. My conversion rates are all showing at 100%. I do have lost opportunities, so I'm not sure how to make this report more accurate. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to answer this here and now on the call, but
it will be something specific to that Salesforce environment. For example, you see that sort of thing for example, if you've got a custom closed lost field, then actually the system isn't recognizing that as closed lost. And I think it was on this tab, was it? So when you create a field, if you create a custom closed won or closed lost field, you've got to mark it as closed or omitted. The way we do conversion rate reports, we do actually use the forecast category. That tells me it was closed won. That tells me it was lost, and we use that. So if you created a closed lost, very dormant deal or something, and not set that to omitted, that would be one possible source of that inaccuracy. It could be something else, Ben. So if that person just wants to, I don't know whether you can capture the details, Ben, or just if that person wants to put their email address into the chat, then get in touch afterwards, and we'll kind of just debug it in your specific Salesforce environment. Happy to do that.
Yeah. They did come back and say that's probably it.
Okay.
That they've had that trouble on reports before, but if it isn't the problem and it's not the problem, do get in touch. For the person who did ask that question, I'll send over the contact us form and everything if you do want to schedule a short call just to have that discussion.
Yeah. Just while we're talking about conversion rates, my hobby horse about conversion rates is do not try to factor in the pipeline. Do not try to factor in the pipeline. Sometimes people try to build conversion rate reports. What percentage of the pipeline did we close? To me, that gives a meaningless figure. I want to know the ratio between won and lost. If you're calculating the percentage of the pipeline, and we have a good month in terms of winning deals, but we also have a good month in terms of creating new pipelines, so it's been a great month. Actually, my conversion rate could go down compared to previous months, which doesn't really tell me anything. So calculate the conversion rate as a percentage, as the relationship between won and lost. So they are 3 reports that really help you to understand whether we can believe that figure of $84,000 and start to drill down on specific opportunities to get a much more realistic and much more reliable figure. Let's look at this table on the screen in front of us now. What is this showing us? What it's showing is this is a list of deals due to close this month. So they're all deals due to close this month, and we can see the stage that those deals are in. And we've ranked the table by amount, by value. So that the most valuable deal is in negotiation and it's worth $22,000, so on and so forth. Now, what else do we know about this particular deal? Let's take this one as an example, actually. Well, it's been open 150 days. Okay, so our average is, let's say, 90 days, but 150 days, yeah, I might buy that. It's 50 days, so it's getting on 2 months since the stage was last updated. So hang on a minute. It's already taken us 6 or 7 weeks to go through that process of negotiation, something you would normally hope would happen fairly quickly. And look at this final number. This deal has moved from 1 month to a next, from 1 month to a later month, 4 times already. Now, we don't care whether it moves within the month. If it moves from the 10th to the 20th, I probably don't care that much. What I'm talking about here, and if it moves forward, in other words, it becomes an earlier date, I probably don't care that much either. That would actually give me some confidence. What I'm talking about here is a slipped from 1 month to a later month 4 times already. Now, there's 5 working days left in April. How confident are we that that deal is going to close this month? We could open it up and start to have a look at it. Maybe we are confident, but this is really helping me to manage by exception. So you've got a lot of opportunities. You can start to use this sort of information to really hone in on some of those deals that I'm wary about. So we can see these are all the deals that are due to close this month. There's one here slipped 5 times already, for example. It's a small deal. It's only worth $5,000, but it's in the investigation. It's due to close this month. So it's in our sales forecast, but it's already, it's 224 days open. So whatever that is, whatever's that, 3/4 of the year or whatever it is. It's in an investigation. The stage was last updated 30 days ago. So it obviously presumably went from prospecting to investigation, and it slipped 5 times. You are not telling me that that deal is going to close in April. Ben Affleck Curry, if that really is your name, that's not going to close in April. So it's really a way of drilling down on specific deals and saying, how confident am I that this deal truly is going to close this month or this quarter, if that's the period of your sales forecast. So really, my point is that we could go and look at those deals, and we can drill into more information about them and so on. But really what we're doing is we're looking for deals that we are skeptical about and saying, actually, bear in mind that this report and this figure gives me my sales forecast. It's a statistically valid way of calculating your sales forecast. But do I believe the opportunities underlying that number? Now, I think you'd probably see in this case, we'd want to go through quite a few of those opportunities. Some we might want to close out. That one that has just slipped 5 times, was it? We don't know, but that might be a deal that we want to take out of the pipeline. Maybe that's a deal that just is never going to happen, so let's take it out of the system, take it out of the pipeline, and get a much more reliable sales forecast. So again, you can see how you could start to use those tools, those reports, those metrics to start to interrogate that number and get something you are at least confident about, something that you would stand up to scrutiny and say, well, this is how I've created the sales forecast, this is my logic, this is my science, and this is, I've been through all of the deals, and this is what this is the expected revenue.
We have another question here. Is the close date month extension a standard field in Salesforce?
If that person just wants to hold on to that question, perhaps I could just answer it in a couple of minutes, Ben, because I'm going to talk about the other resources that we've got available to you, and I'll tell you exactly how to get this chart, this dashboard, and that figure. It's not a standard field, no, something we've created. I will just quickly finish, and in fact, that field is this one here on this opportunity. We've got days since last stage change, days open. So these figures will all update automatically. The other thing that I see a lot, and I generally approve of, is some way of, we've talked about customer uncertainty, and we've talked about a little bit about prioritization. All of these things are functions of standard sales process. You want to qualify the right deals, prioritize deals, and probably we want to capture some of this information in Salesforce as well. And this is a format that I've seen quite a few companies use. Can we win it? So what is our, and I don't mean, yes, we can, yeah, we could win it. Specifically, why could we win this deal? What is our value compared to our nearest competitor? How do we specifically meet the customer's requirements? Do we want to win it? And that's a non-economic decision. Do we really want to win it? Do we want to invest the time and resources in this deal? Is it worth winning? Is the deal sufficiently valuable in terms of size, in terms of margin, in terms of relationship? Do we actually want to win it? So again, these are all sort of qualification questions. You may have others, but I would absolutely encourage you to create a section of the page layout where you're capturing that information, at least for medium to larger opportunities, because for several reasons. One is that the physical act of a salesperson entering this information forces you to think about it, and that is a good thing, I would suggest. And the other thing is that it surfaces the information. So rather than the information just being available for discussion or verbal discussion when you do pipeline review, this information is available to colleagues, to managers, to anybody who might be conducting and reviewing the pipeline, can gauge the quality of this information. What's the close plan? So specifically, if this deal, which I'll be a bit skeptical about, but if this deal is going to close in April, what is the process? What are the steps we're going to go through? What is the close plan? So I've just got a couple of minutes left. So we've talked about those areas of uncertainty: deals slipping, deals coming into the pipeline late, customer uncertainty, and so on. And I hope I've shown you some reports and some metrics that you can use to get much better reliability in your sales forecast using that concept of the expected revenue. Now, I said at the start of the webinar, we had some free resources to help you with that process, and we do indeed. And we have 3 resources. The first, and this goes back to the question that person just asked a second ago, there is the GSP sales dashboard. If you go to the App Exchange, and you search for GSP sales dashboard, then it's this one here. So the dashboard you're looking for is this one here with the orange little logo and the binoculars. It's a sales dashboard. It's free. You can download it. It includes all of the reports and dashboard charts that we've looked at. So it's those sales forecast reports, expected revenue reports, conversion rate, all of that kind of thing are in this dashboard. You can download and install it for free. You can customize it and modify it to your heart's content as well. So if you do want to exclude certain stages from your pipeline reports and so on, then feel free to go ahead and do that. So that package also includes those sales metrics that we looked at as well. So there's 3 metrics: the number of close date month extensions, the days since last stage, and the days open. They are included in that package. So install the package and it will automatically put those fields in. For your existing opportunities, what I recommend you do, and the field that says number of close date month extensions, just go through your opportunities, put 0 in there, put the figure of 0, because the field will be null, it'll be blank when you first put it in. Just go through. You can use the data loader or list views. If you're not sure how to do it, let me know, I'll show you. Just put 0 into those, and then it will start to count for the existing opportunities as well as new opportunities. So that's one free resource. The second is that tomorrow we will publish the recording of this webinar along with a comprehensive brand new blog that we've written, an extensive blog that goes through all of the techniques and examples and screenshots that we goes through all of the techniques and examples of screenshots that we've looked at today. We'll include the webinar recording. I'll just adapt it this evening to include the answers to the questions that people have asked as well. So we will email you tomorrow, Ben, and with a link to that comprehensive blog. It'll include a PDF that you can download and print the blog off as well if you want to do that. And the final thing is every week I hold 4 one-to-one sessions with companies. They last 30 minutes. We usually do it by a web meeting. And in fact, we don't always talk about sales forecasting, although that's certainly a hot topic. We sometimes talk about other things, ways to generate benefits from your Salesforce environment, how to streamline your processes, how to compare sales with target performance, how to know whether you've got enough pipeline to meet target, how to, schedule revenue over time, how to get more benefit out of Salesforce. In the context of this conversation, you can talk about any of those things, but if you want to talk about sales forecasting as well, great. So get in touch with me and we'll include a link to the form to do that. I do 4 a week, so I only restrict it to exactly 4 a week. I do them Monday to Thursday usually. So get in touch with me. It's a free resource that is available to everybody on this webinar if you want to talk to me about using Salesforce and getting more benefit from the system specific to your company. So it's a one-to-one conversation. I say one-to-one. If you want to bring a colleague, absolutely fine. But you get the idea. So that's it, Ben. I don't know if we had any other questions.
Yeah, just before we wrap up the webinar, there's a few more questions that have come in.
Sure.
Just to get them answered before we end things. Gary, do you have a good way to track current forecast versus target in Salesforce? I know for a fact we do.
Yes. many people have spent a lot of time looking for the target tab in Salesforce. Don't waste your time; it doesn't exist. We have a target tracker app. If you go to our website under apps, there's a target tracker app and some videos. I think the video is in Classic, so I'll get around to updating the video, but this is exactly the same process in Lightning, and it's a very good way of comparing historic and future sales performance with targets. So by future, we're talking about, well, have we got enough pipeline to meet the target next month, this quarter, and so on. So the answer is yes to that. We plan to launch it on the App Exchange probably towards the end of next month. So kind of watch this space, and we'll let you know about that.
Yep, that's great. What do you do if the salesperson thinks they can sell it in the future, but it needs to come out of the pipeline for longer sales cycles?
I think there are a number of ways to deal with that. For sure, you could have some companies will have a dormant stage. It's treated as a lost stage for the purposes of calculation of conversion rate and pipeline reviews and so on. But you can have a dormant stage, and that's almost sort of deals I think might happen one day, but I'll put it on the back burner and revisit them every so often. And of course, you could have a dashboard chart and a report to capture all of those deals. That's one way. The other thing you can also do, of course, is use tools, whether it's Pardot, Marketo, or other tools, to keep in touch, almost untouched by human hand, with those people, and look to see, keep a steady eye on how those people are interacting with your content, with your website. If that customer or prospect suddenly starts looking at your pricing page and your About Us page and your technical specifications, then maybe that deal is coming back on the table as well. So it's not just a sales thing, it's not just a sales process. I think that there are ways you can kind of automate some of those activities to start to nurture those deals as well. It's probably a bigger answer needed than the one I've just given, but yeah, I think there's various things that you can do with that. Again, if that person would like to have a conversation, then by all means get in touch.
Yep. Just a couple more before we finish.
Yeah.
Can you take a deal out of expected revenue pipeline without closing it or pushing it out of a date range?
Yes, in the sense that that expected revenue report can have filters in it. So it would depend on why you want to take the deal out. If you've taken the deal out because you don't think it will close this month, then move it to a month you think it will close in. But of course, you can put filters in. Somebody asked about the forecast category filters. So you could put it into a stage or a forecast category that's not included in the report. You can filter out opportunities that, I don't know, have a probability of less than 25%. For example, so the answer is yes. You just need to find a way to. You don't want to modify the report every time. You want to have a report that says opportunities that meet these criteria, these parameters, will be included in the report. Opportunities that won't be included in the report, and have some way of filtering those opportunities out.
Okay, that's great. And the final question for this webinar. Oh, I've just lost it. Actually, where's it gone? There it is. Does the GSP sales dashboard require Lightning?
No, there is. I've done this on Lightning because obviously that's the direction in which most people are going. There is a classic dashboard. There's a Lightning dashboard and there's a classic dashboard. They work in pretty much the same way. Obviously, the classic dashboard looks like a classic dashboard, and the Lightning one looks like a Lightning dashboard. The metrics don't care what interface you're using, so use whichever one. I've done obviously this webinar using Lightning, but the principles apply equally to Classic, and the dashboard works just as well in Classic as in Lightning.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, that's all the questions answered.
Okay. Ben, thank you for your help in organising it. I know there's quite a bit of work goes into these sort of things. Thank you, everybody on the call. Good luck. Happy forecasting. Thank you for now.